Coming up now on Animal Outtakes, these types of animals are extremely rare to find in the wild. We're taking a look at some albino animals and how the inability to produce pigment can cause issues in the wild.
One of the most common things I always hear is people saying that dogs are colorblind. Well, today we're going to test that out.
Our Inspector Planet is using our producer's dog, Rudder, to test color blindness in dogs. And a bacteria that can make your dog and even you sick. What you need to know how to avoid this potentially deadly disease. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. You've likely heard of some albino wildlife, whether it's a reptile, bird, or mammal. An albino animal is rare, but not unheard of. We've seen our fair share of white-colored albino creatures over the past 7 seasons. And while spotting one in their natural environment may be unlikely, you may get a chance to view them at your local zoo. That's because their chance of survival in the wild is hindered when they stand out.
What albino means, all that really means is they have a lack of melanin, black pigment. So with albino animals, sometimes they do still have some patterning and some color, but anywhere the black would be, either kind of a yellowy or pinkish tinge will remain. So they have no black pigment. There's a lot of reptiles that have been seen as albinos. More often than not, when they're found, it's by just some random person finds this little baby, albino snake, know it's something crazy, and we'll bring it into institutions and stuff. Very rarely would albino animals live till adulthood. I'm aware of a couple that have survived to adults. Like I know there's been an orca that's an albino that lives somewhere that's a full-grown adult. But that's because it's a social animal. It can kind of rely on its pod mates to kind of help it along. Alligators, when they're albino, their chances of survival in the wild are very, very slim because even though they turn into these giant apex predators, they start out like the chicken nuggets of the Everglades. Just about everything will eat baby alligators, whether it's herons like the birds, turtles, fish, other alligators, you name it. If it's predatory in the swamps, they'll eat alligators. So when you're that color and you're 6 inches long, probably not going to survive a very long time. So yeah, with alligators, it's a very rare thing to see. We, by our latest estimation, there's somewhere between 50 and 100 albino alligators in the whole world. So we're really, really happy to have these guys here. They're awesome animals for sure. With albino animals, because they don't have any of that black pigment, their eyes are weird. The reason they're even pink is because you can see through to the blood vessels of their eyes. So that essentially means they're blind. With some other albino animals, I know there's certain other health defects that will go along with it as well. As far as we know with albinos, other than not really seeing well, they don't seem to be slowed down or anything like that. They can get sunburn, believe it or not, which is why we have them covered like this. But yeah, other than that, these guys are the same animals as the rest of the alligators in the park, just missing that black pigment. When we knew we were lucky enough to get a couple albino alligators here, we designed this exhibit specifically for them because most of our ponds are outside. Alligators and crocodiles in general, they love to bake out in the sun. That's how they raise their body temperature and things like that. But because these guys can get sunburn, we had to make it special for them, so we covered their pool, and the pool itself is actually heated. So in the wintertime, we'll get their pool up to about 68, 70. We don't try to get it too hot because we would love to breed these one day. And with alligators and with a lot of other reptiles, you need to actually cool them down to get their reproductive biology kind of kicking. So yeah, we'll warm it up in the wintertime, but we don't want them to get too much sun. It's a recessive trait. the albino trait. So in theory, because both of the parents are visual albinos, so that have that albino gene, if they were to breed, in theory all the babies should be albino. Whereas say the male bred with a female that looked totally normal and didn't carry the gene, then none of those babies would be visual albinos. They'd all be what's called hets, which would then be carriers of the trait. So then if you bred those together, you know, like Game of Thrones stuff going on, then you would get, in theory, 50% albinos, 50% normals.
We recently got the chance to visit one of our favorite places, Sarasota Jungle Gardens, where we were introduced to a beautiful animal who also has albinism. And I have to admit, I was pretty intimidated by her at first. All 90 pounds of her was tough to hold. In fact, 3 of us had to do it. Take a look. Jordan, you've walked me over to a very nice bench.
Yeah.
I'm in the shade. I'm thinking I'm going to have an idyllic morning with you. But there's that box, and I know these boxes, and there's something very slithery in that box.
There is, yes.
So what do we have there today?
We have Lizzie. She is our Burmese python. She weighs about 90 pounds. She's about 11 feet long, but she's very, very sweet.
Of course she is. Well, should we see how sweet she
Yes,
is?
definitely.
Okay. Okie dokie. All righty. Well, oh my goodness. Oh, I'm losing her. Okay.
heavy.
She is. That's good, right? She ate this morning. This is very, very, very good.
This is Lizzie. She is our Burmese python. You can see she's a beautiful yellow color. She's called an albino green. The albino means that she does have this nice yellow color, and then green means that she lacks pattern.
Okay, but I do see a pattern in her, actually. I know patterns are what you make them, but she is really quite beautiful. Now,
Yes.
how long is she?
She's about 11 feet long.
Now, I'm touching her. You're touching her. Does she feel this?
She can, absolutely, yes.
Okay, does she know that I'm a friend?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. You can see that her demeanor right now is very easygoing, very calm. Just kind of sitting here, kind of exploring, so definitely very calm right now. So unfortunately, they have become an invasive species in the Everglades, and they are very, very detrimental to the native species living there. So since they do grow so large, there are no natural predators really of them, and then they can also feed on lots of other animals that normally wouldn't have those large predators. So it is something that we do need to do to let people go in there and kind of remove them from the ecosystem, just so our native animals do have the ability to thrive, and we don't have to worry about their populations being depleted.
But do they serve a purpose? Does Lizzie serve a purpose other than being a wonderful teaching tool here?
Yes, well, Lizzie here was a rescue. These guys can be bought as pets, but now there are very strong regulations. That's something people are doing, trying to make these strong regulations so this doesn't happen more, so they aren't released out into the wild. So like I said, Lizzie was a rescue. We have her so we can teach people all about Burmese pythons and then about exotic pet care as well, and why you should do lots and lots of research before you go out and purchase these pets, because that is a big thing that people might have released them into the wild and then they've become more populated, and that's how they have ended up in the Everglades.
Well, they're very, very cute when they're small, and then they
Yes.
grow. They
Yep.
grow. And what is their means of getting the prey and then keeping that prey down?
Yes, so these guys are constrictors. Probably, as you can feel, they're very, very strong. They're basically one giant muscle. So they will kind of camouflage themselves and ambush prey. Then they will wrap around it and constrict, and that's how they do catch their food.
And of course, she's very, very cool. Very, very nice to touch.
Yes.
A little sticky here, but we don't know exactly what she was doing for breakfast, right? What do you think, under normal conditions, would be her lifespan?
These guys can live about 25, 30 years, so they are a pretty long-lived animal.
There is a fallacy, or is it a fallacy, that they continue to grow at some point. Is that true?
They can grow continually depending on their food source. So in the wild, if they can't find a lot of prey, if there's not a lot of prey in the area, their growth might slow down.
She's absolutely beautiful. And you know, Lizzie, I really don't like snakes, but I am falling in love with you.
Yes, we
I
love
really
using
am.
her to teach people all about snakes, why you really shouldn't be afraid of them, and that they're really amazing animals.
Coming up next on Animal Outtakes,
Kid questions!
you have animal questions, Dr. Tracy has the answers. And
Rudder, sit. Paw. No. Good boy!
we're testing to see if dogs are in fact colorblind. That's next. Every dog deserves a lifelong loving home. Dante's Den provides a pristine, comfortable haven for dogs that have been abandoned or surrendered by their owners. We ensure that every pup in our Joyful Dogs adoption program receives lots of love and attention, is properly immunized, spayed or neutered, and is in good health. Prospective pet parents undergo a thorough adoption review to ensure a lifetime of love and care. Find your new furry best friend at Dante's Den. For more information, go to dantesden.org. Dante's Den, continuing the love. Science is everywhere and it's all around us. It's observing the world, forming questions, and the willingness to find the answers. It's something our Inspector Planet does every day, and you can too.
My name is Dr. Tracy Fanara, research scientist and environmental engineer. At Moat Marine Laboratory, I use investigation and experimentation to answer questions. For years, scientists thought that dogs were colorblind, that they only see in black and white. It's not like we could take Rudder here to an eye doctor and ask him if he's seeing yellow, orange, or blue. So today we're going to test out if dogs are in fact colorblind. And the way we're going to do that is see if we can train Rudder to pick one color over another one consistently, which will mean that Rudder here is not colorblind. For humans, to test if we're colorblind, we're shown a set of pictures. And if you're able to see the distinction of a number within this color, then you may be colorblind. With dogs, we can't take them to the vet and ask them if they see the number 6. So we're going to try this test using these 3 colors, different ends of the spectrum. First, we're going to start with yellow and blue, and then we're going to get a little bit more tricky and see if Rudder can tell the difference between yellow and orange, which are a little bit closer. Let's go. Which one? Good boy! First, we're going to train Rudder to always pick the yellow construction paper.
Good boy!
And after a few tries, he got it.
Good boy! Shake. Shake. Good boy! Paw. Shake. 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 Good boy! I actually think he's learning.
So we know that Rudder has now learned to distinguish between yellow and blue. Let's see if he can distinguish other colors, like yellow and orange.
Sit. Sit. Good boy. Shake. Good boy!
Huh. First one. Now when we had yellow and blue, Rudder was able to distinguish yellow perfectly every single time. Now when we have yellow and orange, we just tried this 20 times, and 11 times he picked yellow. 9 times he picked orange. So technically there's no statistical difference. Shake? So what's going on here? How is he able to distinguish between blue and yellow and not orange and yellow? What's the difference? So you might assume color blindness means the absence of color and only seeing in black and white. But in fact, color blindness means a malfunction of the cones, cells in your retina that send signals to your brain to see color. So in humans, we have 3 sets of cones, blue, green, and red. Dogs only have 2. They may not be able to distinguish colors from each other within a certain color scheme. For example, a blade of grass might look gray. Remember guys, anyone could be a scientist or an engineer with some passion, hard work, and innate curiosity of how the world works.
Dr. Tracy comes up with some very interesting topics, and we know that there are some budding scientists out there watching us right now. So we thought we'd answer some of your questions.
Hi, Dr. Tracy. How loud can lions roar?
Well, Vincent, let's base this on something we've likely all heard before. Have you ever stood right next to a lawnmower? Well, a lion's roar can be over 25 times louder than that. A lion's roar can be as loud as thunder. In fact, and here's another shocker, you can hear a lion's roar up to 5 miles away. A lion's roar is used to communicate. They roar to warn their pride and to scare off any intruders. And sometimes they roar just to show how big they really are. With a set of pipes like that, you bet they've got my attention.
Hi, Dr. Tracy. How long is the longest snake?
Cole, this is actually a tricky one and disputed by scientists. So we're going to look at the pounds and length. The green anaconda has massive girth. In fact, it's over 1 foot in diameter, can be over 30 feet long, and weigh up to 550 pounds. This boa is found in the tropical rainforests in South America. The green anaconda's cousin is the reticulated python, and it can actually reach greater lengths. They like the rainforest too and are found in Southeast Asia. But overall, on average, they don't compare to the length and overall girth of the green anaconda. And together, that's what's really impressive. But here's something we can all agree on. Seeing either one of these massive snakes in person would be extraordinary and perhaps a little intimidating.
Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, it's a bacterial disease that can be spread between animals and humans, and it can be deadly. Dr. Glassman is here to explain how to protect both you and your best friend.
People have asked me what it'll cost to restore all the corals back the way they remember. But I have to ask them, what will it cost if we don't do anything?
Animal Outtakes is produced by Dante's Den Foundation, a nonprofit group dedicated to creating the best life for dogs. If you would like to learn more about Dante's Den, donate, or volunteer, visit our website, dantesden.org. Fever, headache, chills, and vomiting. Sounds like the flu, right? Well, these are some of the symptoms of leptospirosis, a bacterial disease that can be spread from animals to humans. In this episode of Ask the Vet, Dr. Glassman explains what we can do to protect ourselves and our dogs. Leptospirosis. It's a mouthful, but it is dangerous, isn't it?
Sure, it's a deadly bacteria of animals and people, actually. But we vaccinate for it pretty much all the time for dogs. Leptospirosis, for those of you who are old enough like me, I've been out 35 years, graduated in 1984. The standard canine vaccine, DHLP, actually PP, two Ps, distemper, hepatitis, the L for leptospirosis, parainfluenza, and parvo. That vaccine has existed since at least the early 80s when I was in veterinary school. So we started vaccinating for leptospirosis back in the 70s. Don't know exactly when, but probably in that time frame. And it was standard. Every dog got it pretty much. And what the complication became was there was 2 strains of leptospirosis in that vaccine. About 20 years ago, dogs started dying of leptospirosis. And when the scientists looked at it, it's like, oh, there's 2 new strains that's killing dogs. So the vaccine companies, of course, hurried up and tried to get a vaccine on the market for the 2 new strains, and they did. Some veterinarians think and believe at heart that that new vaccine was causing reactions in the dogs. Whether it was or not, it's what we call anecdotal. There was never any real studies done on it that I know of. But veterinarians got afraid of vaccinating for leptospirosis because of this reaction to the new 2 strains. So some veterinarians don't do leptospirosis at all anymore. I think that's a big mistake personally. And since then, 20-some years ago, vaccine technology gets better all the time. They're more purified. I heard one lecturer say, yeah, the original ones weren't maybe as pure as they could, and now they've been, more scientifically targeted for the things that need to be targeted in the vaccines, and they're much better than they were for the leptospirosis, the new strains 20 years ago. So I personally tell all of my clients every dog should be vaccinated for leptospirosis because it's very easy to get. When an animal has it, and any mammal pretty much can get it. Skunks, raccoons, rats, mice, pigs, deer. If they have it, the bacteria gets in the urine. So when they pee, it's everywhere. All your pet has to do is come up, take a lick, step in it, lick their foot. If they ingest the bacteria, they're going to die probably of kidney or liver failure if they've not been vaccinated for it. And it's in the wild, all the wildlife that have. So ponds and streams and just wet areas, especially in Florida, we have probably one of the worst areas for leptospirosis potentially.
Yes, and we hear these tragic stories. We heard one just recently where somebody was totally unaware of leptospirosis. The dog sniffed and was gone in 3 days due to the organ failure that you talk about. Right. So we give the leptospirosis vaccination. For the most part, do the dogs have a reaction to it?
No. I mean, vaccine reactions, there's always an issue. You can take penicillin and have a reaction, So there's always a tiny, tiny risk with any medicine of any kind. Vaccine reactions are extremely small, a small percentage, and usually very minor. It's rare, very rare when a pet has an anaphylactic where you can die. Like you get allergic to a bee sting and you can die from anaphylactic reaction. That's incredibly rare with our vaccines. I recommend all dogs have leptospirosis vaccination.
Now, you get the vaccination, but about 3 or 4 weeks later, there has to be a booster,
Well,
correct?
The first time you get it, a pet has to have it twice, about 3 to 4 weeks apart, and then it's once a year after that, correct.
So leptospirosis, don't forget it.
Ask your vet about it.
Stay with us. There's more Animal Outtakes coming up next. This show is produced by Dante's Den Foundation, a lifetime care facility for our four-legged friends. Hundreds of Dante's dogs have been adopted, but there are some who need constant care and will stay here at our sanctuary forever. Like Jewel. This Akita came to Dante's Den from an Akita rescue. She never had an owner who really understood the breed. Akitas are bold and intelligent dogs and are extremely loyal to their family. You can't resist this face. And Jewel was adopted, many times in fact, by folks who wanted to make her a part of their pack. But she always seemed to end up being turned back in. To no fault of Jewel, she was paired with folks who already had multiple dogs. And for many Akitas, this is not an ideal situation. Now, Jewel is 8 years old and has found her family with the staff at Dante's Den, and she is very content. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. Zeus and I will be back here again next week with even more animals and some wild adventures. Until then, thanks for watching.
All right, Marcia, you stay where you are.
I'm not moving, unless I gotta move fast. Oh my God. Okie dokie. All righty. Well, oh my goodness. Oh, I'm losing. This week on Animal Outtakes. That's a blooper. That's a blooper.